Say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then followed by 15 seconds of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Chad Melinda,
Here.
Bill Niemeyer,
Here.
Terry Reed,
Present.
Ethan Maple,
Here.
and then Ryan is absent.
Correct. Thank you. Public comments, 3-minute time limit per person for items on the agenda only. Okay. We'll move on to accounts payable vouchers. Do I have a motion to approve APVs number 26414 through 26471?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion carried and seconded. Any discussions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried to approve APVs 26414 through 26471. Adoption of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the town council minutes from May 1st, 2024?
I'll make that motion.
Thank
I
you.
will second that motion.
Okay, motion carried and seconded. Any discussions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried to approve town council minutes from May 1st, 2024. Okay, now we have food truck ordinance. Tonight will just be a discussion only. No decisions will be made because Ryan is absent, and we need Ted to clarify his thoughts on, there's some conflicting language about the licensing periods as presented. I don't know, did you guys catch that? Okay.
Well, that's what I imagine that's probably what some of the things we're talking about, right? When it comes to the ordinance, is just kind of looking at some of those items that stood out to us so that we can come back with him with some suggestions,
Yes.
right?
Yes, 6502B, the licenses, it says are valid for a period of 6 months from April 1st through September 30th or October 1st through March 31st. And then 6502E states a license shall be valid for a period of 1 year from date of issuance.
Right.
And 6503D states license shall expire after 1 year. So that's what Ted needs to
Yeah.
clarify for us. What else do we have?
Well, under 62 or 65.02B, it says that the fee is $150 for a 6-month license. And, I know that he had to put some number in just to be if nothing else, a placeholder. I don't know myself. That might be a little bit high. And then I know we had talked about a tiered system. Maybe it's a $50 if it's a special event, or 10 days, 30 days, something. Maybe 150 might be an annual fee. I don't know, just what thoughts are. I don't run a food truck, so I don't know if $300 a year is perceived to be reasonable or not. That was just something I wanted to question and talk about, because I don't know.
If you look at other towns, that 150 is kind of low,
Okay.
or reasonable.
For 6 months?
Mm-hmm. I think Greenfield, well, I can't quote that. But if 65.01C says shall not be subject to sections 65.02 or 65.03,
Special event.
which includes permits and fees, yeah. But shall comply with requirements promulgated under section 6504, which is the section that he added specifically for special events.
I like the tiered system. I don't have a problem if we do 6 months. I think it needs to be explained that whether that's prorated. So when you do a 6-month term and someone comes in between that, we want to make sure that it's not prorated. But I think that's not spelled out here, and so if we go with this type of model, then we need to make sure that, hey, if you come in at, I'm just looking here, so if you come in at August and wanna, I mean, you're $150 for a month then. I mean, that's what you're paying. And so we just need to understand whether or not that's the picture, or if something else would be different, because you can't, it's not going to be worth trying to figure out, a moving target with 6 months rolling. So if someone comes in August, wants a permit, it's $150 for that month, and then they're going to have to re-up come the next period.
And I think we could very easily insert something to the effect of, there shall be no prorations based upon the date the application is submitted.
Right.
And that takes away any, thought process that, well, I should only have to pay you for a third of this.
What's weird to me is how we define the 6-month periods. You know what I mean? That's the only thing that I kind of think is weird. Like, if we're gonna do it, let's just do the 6-month. Like, if you get the application, then you're good for 6 months, right? The weird part is like the
set dates.
The set dates, right? Because then we've got to answer this question, where it's also kind of weird. Like, I don't know, didn't make sense to me. It was more of a, if I pay the 150,
and
6 months is good.
I think maybe we should ask Yvonne if we want to be set up to have to monitor, because then staff has to monitor a 6-month period for each license.
Can I interrupt? Excuse me. Zach, can you weigh in on this? Do you know what Ted's thoughts were?
I believe his thought process was so that he didn't want overlapping licenses. So that 6 month kind of cuts out the overlapping. At least that's what he explained in an email to Terry. So that's about all I know with his thought process on that.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's valid. I also think that, if there's a better system that we want to come up, we'll figure out a way to work the system. We don't want to overtax people, but if there's a better system that we can come up with.
Well, it was $60 a week, right?
A year.
It was $60 for the full year.
Yeah.
I mean, it breaks down to $25 a month, really, which, I mean, at the end of the day, there's a portion of this, when we look at it, that there has to be some fee established. $25 a month to me doesn't seem high. Again, to your point, I don't run a food truck, but at least that has some piece in there. Quite frankly, the town has to monitor those things, so I think there should be a fee involved. I would imagine that the hourly rate of our staff is more than what that's going to be to monitor that monthly. So I think, if anything, the fee is low in my opinion, but
Okay.
I don't know what it is.
And it does, thinking about it, it does make sense. So it doesn't overlap. That will make it easier for Yvonne's.
Yeah.
Because in.
Go
for
ahead,
an
Yvonne.
ex-
Go ahead.
It's coming. Yeah, the prorating would be really tricky.
Yeah.
I think that I don't think it's a good idea. I'd be more of a fan of doing a year thing rather than 6 months, because that way we have, right now, we have the permits and have a particular color. So that color is posted on the vehicle. It makes it really easy for the town manager or police or anybody who needs to, follow up to see whether this person is permitted in town. It's really quick and easy to see by the color of the sticker. It also helps us in administration to have one permit sticker for multiple different permits, right? We can use the same permit sticker also for the golf carts. And we can use that same permit stick because it has a number on it. And so every sticker's individually numbered, but it's for that calendar year, it's that color. That's how we've been doing that. That works quite nicely because at first sight, you know, if somebody has the green sticker on their golf cart or on their food truck, you know that that was permitted for this year. And I don't know what the color is this year because I didn't get mine yet, but.
It's red.
I don't think any of us liked the 1 year.
Well,
That's what we tossed around
for
anyway.
for me, it's the difference between 6 months and 1 year isn't going to make that much of a difference because you're talking about almost food truck season and non-food truck season in these 6 months. But what comes to my mind, if for administrative purposes, keeping it within a calendar year makes sense, then I think a structure could be a $300 and $150. So if you get it from January through June, it's a $300 fee, and that takes you through the end. But just so we're not sticking somebody for $300 if they get it in August, if you get a permit after July, it's $150. That way, someone can come in, and that keeps it at the calendar year.
Okay,
And-
that's, I mean, that's simple enough.
That way, someone doesn't have to come in for every 6 months, but it does keep your administration kind of system similar.
Yeah, and we don't give out so many permits in a year, Dad. We want to get multiple orders of stickers, right?
I hear
Now,
that.
those stickers work. The system works as we're doing it with Brenda doing the golf cart permits and all of that. And that works, I think, for Bob as well. When you see something speeding down one of the town roads, to know whether it's permitted or not.
Yeah. What do you guys think about that system?
Yeah, so it's a 12-month permit, but if you buy it between April and September, it's $300. If you buy it between October and March, it's $150.
Why is
Is that-
it offset
No.
by?
Is that not what?
It would just
No,
be
per
if you
calendar
purchase
year.
it between January and June, because it's a year, it's a
keep it on
calendar
the
year.
calendar year, okay.
It's a calendar year permit. If you purchase it between January and June, it would be $300. July through December, it's $150.
Thank you. I was going off the calendar according to Ted.
I like the calendar according to the town better. It's easier to administer.
The only thing that I don't like about the year is what if, we hand out 10 and then somebody else wants another one? Like, at what point are we, because quite frankly, 300,
Well, nobody's gonna be there for the whole year, right? It's all gonna be piecemeal, a couple of days here and a day there. Right?
Do we really know
at the
that?
same time.
Well, we have the ability to limit it. I mean, that's in here too, is the council can limit the number of permits.
But why? I think we can probably suggest if we have the locale where they can set up, that they say, hey, maximum of 3 or maximum of 7 or whatever. If the Lions Club would allow them to set up there, they can say, hey, we've already got, our limit for this particular date, so no to the next one that calls. I don't know, there's so many food trucks in existence in the area or in the state. I mean, I don't think that we need to limit how many permits we hand out. If you limit the number of days that they can be in the town, and you have one specific area where you would suggest that they go, or the only place that you allow it, or whatever, then that can limit, so
Yeah.
for that day.
I like keeping that the town council reserves the right to limit. I don't necessarily imagine that that's something we're going to jump in on, but if it becomes an issue, we still then have the right to make a decision to
Absolutely.
cut it off if we need to cut it off. I, like you, don't think if you issue 25 permits, all 25 are going to show up in the speedway on the same day, right? So I think keeping it in there gives us the ability to make that decision if need be,
I think that's a good
but I don't necessarily think it's going to be a problem.
And one thing I didn't see, and maybe I just missed it, but I didn't see, do we want to make any reference to the Lions Club parking lot being a preferred location or designated location?
I don't think so.
Allowed
That's
location?
my opinion.
Okay.
Because then it's too designated,
narrow.
or too
Okay.
restrictive. I mean, that's just my thoughts.
I mean, really, and this goes back to the 300 feet, like that pretty much limits
Where they can.
everywhere
Yeah.
except for there, right?
And I would recommend we reduce that and include language that offers a waiver option. Because
The
that's not in this
problem
either.
with the waiver, and I think at the Lions Club, maybe where we discussed that, what if you walk in and the clerk, the high school kid working at Subway says, sure, I'll sign your waiver? Is it the tenant? Is it the operator, the owner of the Subway, or is it the owner of the real estate where the Subway's located? So if you're gonna get a waiver, who do you get a waiver from, and who's gonna police that you got it signed by the right person? I mean, just some problems.
Well, another thing, if we have a waiver, then I don't see a need for the ordinance. And with respect to the town manager, I mean, like, if they did, if a high school kid just signed it, they brought it in, then there's, what can we say? The ordinance isn't any good, is it?
It's just a matter of the feet that they can operate. And I would say that it is the business, the manager or the owner of said business. And that would be incumbent upon the food truck to get that information. Because the question is not, who owns the building. The reason for that part of the ordinance, as I understand it, is because we want to make sure that the food trucks are not infringing on the businesses that exist within those brick and mortars. So in my mind, it would be the manager or owner of the business versus the.
But how will Yvonne know that? Who owns whatever pizza place comes in
I
next?
have no way of knowing.
And I don't think it has to. I just think it's an additional piece that is incumbent upon the food truck to do so. If we wanted to follow up, we could. But at the same time, it's a matter of keeping that principle that says, hey, if this food truck's going to operate within a certain amount of feet, then it's their responsibility to get that waiver. They don't need to submit that to the town council, but if they're called on it, then they should be able to produce it.
What's the opinion from over here? Because once we say yes on this, then it becomes you to manage it and process and all that. So
The way I see it, most of these companies are franchises. So the owner is never present. It's a manager, maybe, if you can find a manager that's over age 26 and that's working the location. I mean, I almost think it's not a good thing to put the burden on that young person to sign something that they don't even understand, or may not be able to send it to their boss to get a reply. I mean, it becomes hard to.
Yeah, but that's all on them. Like, we're not managing that. The town isn't managing that. We're just making
No,
it
but
part of
if
the
you
ordinance that it's
require
your
it-
responsibility as a food truck to say, hey,
So if I go up there and say, okay, show me your waiver, you're too close to
right.
the sandwich shop, whichever sandwich shop, I'm gonna look at a waiver and I'm gonna stand there and I have absolutely zero knowledge whether they signed it themselves, just to have a signature on the piece of paper, or whether it actually was signed by somebody who has something to say about that establishment.
Right. I get that. Name, title, all of those things. But the ordinance is us doing our due diligence to make sure that we're protecting kind of the perspective of the town. If people break it, they're going to break it, right? I mean, people break ordinances all the time. That's kind of job security for chief, is that we have people that break laws. And I think that's a reality, right? I mean, if people are going to break rules, that's not a reason to not have rules.
I would just say, you have this much distance, that's the rule, and not have a waiver that will cause somebody to break a rule because they got no other way to, have their food truck sitting there and that's what they want. If you just don't allow it, period, there's no question.
Without
Unless
a without a
you
waiver,
guys- I think that it should be, in that case, it needs to go in front of the town council. Say, hey, I'd like to set up on this day, this location. I know it's gonna break a rule, will you allow me? And then you guys give permission.
Well, there's a question. Do we have the authority to tell somebody you can violate our ordinance?
Would, a special exemption,
Okay.
yeah, special exemption hearing, that would follow that process, yeah.
I do think minus a waiver option, or even with a waiver option, the 300 feet, that can be reduced to 200 or even 150 in my mind.
Why we change it from 2 to 3?
I don't know.
It was
It
2.
was
and it was
2.
approved at 3, and the 2 never. I mean, my understanding is that it was last approved at 3, right?
I
Yes.
think everybody was so desperate to figure out how they could manage this food truck situation that it was passed without scrutiny and without anybody really going with the little measuring wheel to measure how far 300 feet or 200 feet really was.
So, yes, it was 300
time,
feet.
and I think you're starting over.
And
And whether
then,
you do 200 feet, 300 feet, or, 20 feet, that's, you're looking at it now with fresh eyes.
well, it was 300 feet, the ordinance that passed. Then Ted changed it to 200, and then he came back with 300. So,
Without a waiver, I would recommend 150. If we have a waiver option, for me, it's the feet is moot, because then it's incumbent upon the food truck.
I would like to know if there's any way to find out what difference would it make. Is there any practical difference between 100 or 200? Me personally, I like the 200 and no waiver. And that's just, and I don't know why, it just,
I like that.
I like 200 and no waiver. I just think that the waiver opens up a can of worms in administering that, and you're right, Ethan, you would hope that everybody's gonna do it the right way. And when, as opposed to just, I'll just sign a name. I'm Ronald McDonald. I have McDonald's permission. Because I don't want to make it incumbent on staff to have to ferret out, is this valid?
I agree with you. I wanted to throw out one other thing. There is a location in the town where a neighborhood has created a section specifically for a gathering of neighborhood people, and they had a food truck there, which was really nice. What is it called? Stone Crossings has a section where they have a playground and an extra parking space, and where they can have a food truck. So I just wanted to throw
Yeah, there's
that
no
out there.
question.
That's-
There's plenty of places in neighborhoods. It's just a matter of Main Street.
Mhm.
That's the question. Is what effect does the feet have on Main Street? And 300 seems
300
a lot. 200, I'm okay with. If we want to, I mean, we can always change it. If we say that 200 and we realize, hey, you know what, that's still a little restrictive and there isn't anything, we can change it. And we can look at other options down the road. I think we need to kind of put something that we can be happy with and start moving forward with it. But
Yeah.
those little things, as we put it into practice, we can always adjust.
Okay, so we're going to move it to 200 feet versus 300. And then we're going to, did you like the way Ethan stated the fees?
Yes, in 6502B, I like the difference between a half fee or a full fee. And in that same section, I think we should add a sentence that says, there shall be no prorations based upon the date the application is submitted. And it speaks very clear. You don't even have that as a request. And then Yvonne doesn't have to be the mean person and say, no.
I'm already the mean person on Facebook. I don't like tacos. You don't like tacos, according to Facebook.
Jim, what do you think?
That's not true.
I don't want to get in the weeds too much. This has been going on for quite a while. I agree that 150, 200 feet, it's, that doesn't bother me. I just want to make sure that, like I said, if the AutoZone wants to have one for a day, so be it. I don't care if it's 50 feet from, they have it one day. It's not intruding. The whole thing is, we don't want to put a burden on our brick and mortars. So a one-day event, that's what I wanted to, I just got tired of seeing the truck every day for months on end. And I think we've got that resolved. I think 150 feet is fine, or 200, whichever you decide. But I think the enforcement, I don't think that's going to be a big issue at this point, so.
Okay.
A couple of the other things that I wrote notes on is on 65.02G. Is there language, we have language in there referencing public safety or property of the public, and I just wrote a note, is there any worthwhile adding nuisance language, kind of situations in which you may not technically be a public safety issue or an issue with property, but there's a nuisance that's being caused because of it. And this speaks to whether or not the council has the authority to limit it. So can the council say, hey, it may not be a public safety or a property damage issue or property safety issue, but we don't want 20 trucks in at one time. Does that fall under a nuisance element? It was just a question I had. It's nothing that.
Well, the sentence that is added in 65.03L says any operation of a mobile food vehicle that, based upon the town manager's reasonable determination, endangers the public safety or property of the public,
Right.
shall be ordered to cease such operation. It doesn't use the word nuisance, and maybe that would be a good place to add that as an additional concept, but I think there is getting towards the idea.
Either place, the other thought I had with that particular line item was, if it's a public safety issue, do we work in conjunction with the police department in some way, shape, or form? Because if it's a public safety issue, then that falls under the police department, and I don't want someone coming back and there being an issue related to who believes what is a public safety issue and not. I think the police should be the ultimate authority on public safety.
Well, I think the police would be the enforcement, but as worded, and Chad, you're right, I see in U, it's very similar to L. So whether you put nuisance language in one or both places, it's the same concept. And in U, it would be the town manager says, hey, this is a problem. He notifies the operator, and if they ignore it, well, then I think that's when you turn to Bob.
And the police, they monitor everything anyway. I wouldn't want to include them in the ordinance because they're already doing their job.
Yeah, town manager can enforce to a point. The only time we would be needed is if there's just refusal to, basically, they're not gonna listen to him because he doesn't have a badge. We'll definitely come back, Jim.
Can we get you a badge?
You can get him a badge. They'll say,
Let's
"Town
do
manager."
that.
Can I get a badge too?
Can we get a badge too?
Their
Yeah.
stickers are really cool.
I want
I think if we change the distance, we took care of the probably the biggest issue that we had, which was somebody staying there for an extended period of time. I mean, let's call it what it is. We're on version 15 of a food truck ordinance. If we find there's a problem with it, then change the ordinance again, right? But at the end of the day, the longer we delay on this, like, to me, it's almost, we can nitpick every piece of this. We're just going to have to let it run and see. And is it work for the town? Does it work for the employees of the town that have to enforce it? Does the community have an issue with it? And then from there, if we need to make an adjustment, we'll make an adjustment. I think the only thing that I'm hearing everybody in unison saying, hey, this is the only thing that we would want to change is the 200 feet and then maybe verbiage on nuisance. And then from there, like,
And the
get it rolling.
fees.
Yeah.
and fees.
The only other thing that I wrote down was in relation to like what Jim was talking about with AutoZone, and AutoZone could come in saying, hey, we want to do this, and we could define that as a special event. I have two questions related to that. One, if the town defines it as a special event, is there any liability that the town has for that designation?
I don't believe so, but
That's a,
I'll have to get it back to you on that one.
okay.
good answer.
Fair enough. The second one is, should we have a special event defined by council, instead of asking food trucks to have any particular, because they're void of any fee. Can the organizer, should we have a fee for that organizer that simply covers all the food trucks for the licensing? Or
Well,
should-
in 6504 special events, they still have to get a temporary permit, so I don't think we would be liable at that point, as long as they follow the same procedures for the permit above. So I don't think that we would be liable. I think if we define special event, then we get into it. Like, the more restrictive we get, the more painful it will become to
Right.
enforce.
So how do you envision this playing out? So Summerfest,
Main Street comes in and says, we want to, call this a special event so we can have a food truck, or food trucks plural. No different than if the pub comes in and says, we're going to have a food truck, and so to do so, we want this particular day designated as a special event, then we have a decision to make.
okay,
And, to Jim's point, it's a one-time thing, it's one-off.
Right.
So they're not taking business away from, a brick and mortar.
right,
So I like the idea that somebody has to, I don't care who, and it can even be the town council on its own initiative, that, hey, I'm aware that this is coming up at the school parking lot. The school called and asked whether we call it a special event. I'm okay, I don't care who brings it forward. We have to discuss it, determine if we decide, yeah, that's a special event, that's good enough for me.
so we can issue a permit to the organizer that would cover all of the food
Well,
trucks?
We can
We're gonna
establish
call
it's
it
a special event.
and then Yvonne's gonna issue the permit.
Well, that's what I mean, is,
Yeah, yeah.
as a town, we issue a permit
Yep,
to the organizer, but all the trucks don't have to come in and get a permit.
Correct.
I think that's the way
That
it's,
is how it's been in the past.
Right.
yeah.
You can change it however.
Well, this says that the way I read this,
Got us into
Say
this mess.
the way that I read this is shows that the vehicles have to come in and get one. And I think that as long as the organizer is issued a permit, that should be
I see
sufficient.
that.
So do we dare add a sentence that says, an event coordinator can obtain one permit for the entire event?
That's what we ran into last time. I mean, you want one permit for 30 trucks, It's not that it's money, but it is, it is trying to manage it, so.
Well, and in that circumstance, then you would hope whoever the organizer is, they're going to have some criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be on their onus to make sure there's
If it were
liability
the Lions
insurance.
Club, they're gonna say we can only have 4 or 5 or something.
The nuisance piece also takes care of that. So if 40 show up and we give Jim the power to say, hey, this is a
This is a
nuisance,
nuisance.
10 of you gotta go, or if you guys can't figure it out, all of you can go, I think defining, again, the more we get granular in defining it,
Yep.
it's gonna get harder to manage.
I don't disagree. I just want to make sure that it reads without conflict.
And then maybe we need to send Zach and Ted an email saying, hey, is this an issue? If it is,
Add a sentence.
add the sentence. If it's not, we're good.
Because there's no, I mean, yeah, we should probably, if we're going to add the new nuisance element, we need to add it under 6504 because we've already said that that's the only section that applies to special events.
Yeah, I mean, you could copy and paste it in both spots. if
Yep.
you needed to.
I mean, yeah, that's fine. I'm just trying to figure out logistically how this plays out because it's got to make sense for the town and it's got to make sense for the organizers, and this is the time to do that.
Yep.
trust me, I'm ready to not talk about food truck ordinances too. So,
Okay.
Zach, does that give you some direction on the next
It
version?
does, and I'll get with Ted, and we'll work out those concerns, and then we'll send another red line back to you all, and hopefully get that nailed down, so next time you have something to vote on.
Are there going to be red lines on red lines?
There might be red lines on red lines.
We do blue.
Can you change the color? Yeah.
Blue in there or green?
We'll get another color in
All
there
right.
for you.
Yeah, good. Okay.
I'm colorblind, so pick whichever color you want.
Oh, that's right. All right. Thank you for this discussion. I think it's moving us forward. So, let's move on to new business. The MS4 annual report and ordinance, Nyla Staples and Andrew Otts. Huh? Oh, Brady, okay, sorry. Brady Dryer,
No, you're fine here.
Commonwealth
Where's
Engineers.
Andrew?
Well, I let him go home.
He bailed. All right. There you go. Good man.
I had some handouts for you guys. I thought
Thanks, sir.
we would kind of start off
Thank you.
with how the town's regulated by stormwater regulations. So basically, we're a municipal separate stormwater system, given our size and population density. So we have basically. what's
Brady,
called-
can I ask a quick question? Do you have other copies of these, if anybody who's here would like one?
Yeah.
We can start them around. I've got one more.
I thought you had a stack there. I just want to make sure if someone wants to follow along, we have.
I'll start these guys around. This is more about the ordinance.
Thank you.
And could you leave one at the end for Ryan too?
Thank
Thank you.
So basically, because of our size and population density, we're regulated by IDEM, really IDEM and EPA under a general permit. So a couple of years ago, we started working with the town, basically to comply with what at the time was a new general permit. So, over the last couple of years, we've, written management plans and water quality characterization reports and things like that that have gone to the state. We've gone through, I think, one in particular audit with the state of Indiana.
Excuse me, Brady, can I get you to
Oh,
stand
good
by the
night.
mic so we can
Yeah,
be
absolutely.
recorded and it'll be on YouTube, otherwise they can't hear you. Thank you.
So, we've been audited by the state of Indiana, so we've gone through all that. So, just kind of to kick it off and talk about some of the things we've done over the last couple of years, or really the last year. IDEM requires us to submit an annual report, and that's the first two-page handout that I gave you guys that talks about kind of the elements of what we're obligated to do in administering our stormwater program. So we've got public education and outreach. That's something that the town of New Pal does in conjunction with Hancock County. So we have different events where we talk about, and mind you, this is predominantly stormwater quality. And then kind of moving on to the next page or the backside, we also have what's called requirements to regulate illicit discharge, detection, and elimination. So basically what that is to ensure that we don't have, like motor oil and grease for restaurants and things like that that are discharging to our sanitary sewer system. So within that, we can see that the town, Nyla, has done inspections of all of our outfalls on an annual basis. The next item is under MCM4. There is construction stormwater runoff control. That's kind of the ordinance that we're here to talk about tonight that I'll get to in a second. But that has to do with developments like Copperstone, for example, where we have erosion control plans. We have a permit that was issued for that site development. The town is responsible for inspecting that site to make sure things like silk fence and the likes are up, after, during rain events and things like that. So, with that, Steve, I think, and the team here, Nyla and Jim, do a real good job of checking in on those facilities as we're required to do by the state. The post-construction component, that's gonna be basically like your detention, retention basins, the designs of those, So that's kind of a general, so that was kind of two birds with one stone. The town's required to report to the governing body on an annual basis, kind of what our stormwater objectives and so forth are for the year. So with that, moving into the stormwater ordinance itself, so as I mentioned, I would get back to that. So that would be the two items on the checklist that we just went through the annual report. So basically what we're looking at is, regulating sites, typically those that are an acre or more, and that would be, your subdivisions. I think we've had some recent applications for, was it Starbucks, Jim, was one that was not too long ago. I was thinking there was another permit review that we did.
We've done several of them,
Several,
yeah.
so-
Willow Ridge, Starbucks,
Jiffy
Jiffy
Lube.
Lube,
That was last week.
Mr. Jones property.
That one, yes, and basically Commonwealth, we perform those reviews to make sure we're in accordance with state standards. So our ordinance itself, that I believe was distributed to the group previously, that is actually based on Purdue Local Technical Assistance Program, and it's something that's been developed in conjunction with a lot of stormwater entities and other professionals that are involved in the stormwater regulations, if you will, the municipal stormwater regulations. So we have generally recommended and provided to you for adoption that ordinance. So it covers, expectations start to finish on what a contractor or builder or development, what those expectations are in terms of an application, right? What sizing would be, depending on, site runoff and things like that. If you get down to it and you start to go through that, we also have things that we don't like to do, the things that you sometimes have to do, as you described in your food truck discussions, compliance and enforcement. So we also have some teeth there when we have contractors where we come out, do inspections, tell them to put up silk fence, they don't do it repetitively. The town needs an out. You need an avenue to take, to enforce the ordinance. So that kind of gives you a rundown of the ordinance. And I think, one of the reasons that we recommend the adoption of that LTAP ordinance is going to be just because that is what some of the contractors that are familiar with New Powell here and other cities and towns within Indiana, that's kind of what they're used to, and it's protective in that it's compliant with both our municipal stormwater permit as well as another state permit that's out there that regulates construction stormwater as well. That's kind of the general overview. I think I provided a lot of ins and outs, in the beginning, and then kind of tried to drill down to the specifics as to the ordinance itself. If you guys have any questions or maybe legal questions, I believe it's been through legal review at this point.
It was a good read, by the way.
Right to sleep.
Part of the
I
job.
saw nothing about food trucks.
When I got the email on Friday or this weekend, opened it up and it was 80 pages. I was like, oh my gosh, something on here is not going to be fun. But yeah, it's necessary though. Necessary.
It's one of those high-end requirements. And then, to give you even more reading material to put you to sleep, there's basically a brother or sister document, an associated document that's essentially technical standards, and that gets into kind of like the engineering kind of stuff about, sizing things and, drainage swales and things like that, and that's something that's kind of like I said, a document that's related, but we don't recommend to be adopted as part of the ordinance.
Is this an ordinance that we have to adopt every year? Is that how it is? It's not? Okay.
And what I will say is our general permit that I referenced that started in 2021, that would lapse December 2026. There is a possibility that when we get a new general permit, then we would have to make some updates, but it wouldn't be until well after that. So we have a few years on this one to answer your question.
Okay.
So Brady, this evening, you are asking us to vote on adopting the ordinance that's in our materials?
Ordinance number 051524.
I'll make the motion that we adopt
Thank you.
ordinance number 051524 as presented in our backup materials.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion carried and seconded to, is there any discussion?
If we're going to approve this tonight, is that one of those things where we have to suspend rules or whatever to approve it on the one go, or are we just approving it on the first read? Does it fall under that category that I remember, like, understanding?
You can.
Okay, so
First read.
in general, it should be first reading, and then the next meeting would be the second reading,
Correct.
but we could do it under one reading.
You
If
can.
it's unanimous.
Okay. Is there a reason to or to not do it? One way or the other?
It's all up to you guys.
The
Yeah.
thought process of doing it both readings at one time, you
I don't
won't
wanna read
have
it twice.
those 43 or 43 pages coming back the next meeting.
I'm with
Not
you.
that that's any motivation to do or not do, but, just for.
I'm
the
not
record.
opposed to it. I'm just trying to clarify.
Well, let's take a vote and see if we
I
even
agree.
have that
Real
consideration.
quick, page 31 of that document, page 49 of our material, it shows the application process. That's just to show the process, correct? Because it says Town of Ingalls or something, but you're just showing how the permit process. Okay, cool.
Okay.
That's it. Still a question.
No,
Okay.
our permits go to Ingalls.
I was pretty impressed.
Ethan, to clarify,
Yep, absolutely. We
You-
outsource.
you would have to put it to a vote to unanimously. It would
Got
be
you.
unanimous vote to pass on the first reading. So you.
So that's the first motion, and then the
Correct.
second motion is to pass it.
Correct. So it would have to be unanimous to
Okay.
pass it on the first motion.
Then the second motion could be made.
Can you just do that?
Whatever motions you're gonna make,
Yeah.
Bill, just do what he
Let's just-
said.
Well,
right,
we
Bill.
have a motion and a second. So, and then if there's any other discussion, and if not, we could vote on the first motion.
All right.
All in favor of the first motion, say aye.
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 Now,
Opposed?
because the first motion was unanimous, I'll make a motion that we suspend the rules and we take ordinance 051524 for consideration of a second approval, second reading now.
I'll second that one too.
Okay, motion carried and seconded. Any discussion further? Good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion has passed to approve ordinance 051524. Whatever.
We done it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Legal updates.
Oh, before we leave new business, I'd like to bring up an item that's new business. And I
Okay.
apologize that I didn't have the opportunity to notify anybody before this meeting, but during the redevelopment commission meeting that was held at 6 o'clock this evening, the redevelopment commission discussed the possibility of installing sidewalks near the Seifert Creek subdivision. There's an estimate that's approximately $34,000. And during the redevelopment commission meeting, there was a suggestion to raise the issue with the town council that the town would pay half of that expense and the redevelopment commission would pay half of that expense So there would be a cost sharing to install the sidewalk. And I don't know, Jim, maybe you could tell us any specifics about the sidewalk, but it's my understanding it's along Bittner where people currently walk into the road.
That's correct, yeah. It's right between, what is it? Preserves and Cypress Creek. And there's about an 800-foot section of sidewalk that you're forced to walk back out on the road. And it's a very tricky walk, so.
And the redevelopment commission did not take a vote because they wanted to first defer to the town council on the concept of whether we would be inclined to split that cost. And anytime anybody asks the town council to pay for anything, I like to ask Yvonne whether or not the town has a
Already.
budget item or the funds. Is that something that the council should or can consider?
I'm not gonna tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but we do have money set aside in our budget under Danae's sidewalk, which is really a kind of a catch-all for, if we need this money for something else, it can be purposed for something else. Let me just tell you real quick, that this year, you're close to going over the budget, but in certain sections, not everywhere. But there's a potential because you're adding a comprehensive plan that was not budgeted for, and the police vehicles will be more expensive than is budgeted for. We have the money, that's not the problem. I always hesitate to say, hey, yeah, there's a chunk of money sitting there, why don't you take it all? You know, there is money for that. If you want to consider this, you can. I also think the RDC has received TIF money, and there is enough in their fund to pay for that expense directly out of the TIF, taxes that have been received. So you take it from there.
How much is it?
33,000 and change. I rounded up to 34. And there was also some discussion that we might be able to rebid or obtain new bids because circumstances have changed since we only had one bid, and Jim thinks he can get some bids that are probably a little lower. So it's just the concept of if the RDC agrees to pay half, would the town pay half? And that's at the RDC meeting. I said I'd bring it up.
Yes, because Jim said he was going to get more quotes, more updated quotes, because that was from December.
Yeah. So maybe we'll take the time to get a couple more quotes so we can get a more accurate concrete number. Concrete, get it? And then
See what you
Yvonne,
did there.
Yeah, and Yvonne could get with Jared to kind of shore up to make sure we're comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting we have to vote on that.
Right.
I wanted to at least raise the issue so that everybody can think about it.
Well, and just for numbers, how much did you say was in that sidewalk that you mentioned? How much is in that account?
And
30.
budgeted is $35,000.
So there's 35 in that. After tonight's action at RDC, there's about 75 in the RDC. So that gives us an idea of those numbers. The cost, the initial estimate is $33,050.
And we hope that'll come down.
Hopefully that'll come down. But those are the numbers. I think it's a need in our community, and I wouldn't have any problem splitting the cost if our budget can sustain it.
And we can look at it some more. The next RDC meeting is scheduled a month out. You will have another meeting in between that. So why don't we just gather all the information, put it on the agenda for discussion at the next meeting, and then you guys can vote on it.
Thank
We
you.
don't have another meeting. We don't have another meeting between now and the RDC. Because the RDC was the first meeting in June.
Oh, okay.
We have a meeting after the RDC.
1 hour after.
Yeah, so the RDC can make a decision if they choose to do so, and we can make a decision the same night.
Okay, well then, so I'll ask questions. What's the thought from the RDC on not paying it in full?
The only rationale I can think is that it would leave half of that amount for other projects.
Do they have other projects that are on the docket right now?
Yes.
Yes. And me, because at the RDC meeting, I proclaimed myself the proponent of all sidewalks. I like east-west before north and south, but east-west to run a sidewalk to the west of McDonald's isn't, $80,000 in the RDC, they can't do that. So that's a couple years out. And Jim mentioned, a very good point that if the town center progresses, that's going to help define which side of the street it goes on. And so sidewalks along that area could very easily be included in the town center project. So as a member of the RDC, the only thing that I can say is it would just preserve some funds for sidewalks in other areas.
Plus, NDOT has to be in on that.
Yeah.
From my perspective on the RDC, it's a good partnership. I mean, it doesn't have to come out of one pot, and if there is a budgeted item for sidewalks and there's no already defined use of that budget item, for me it makes sense.
And it's only half.
And it's only half.
Yeah, I would say, understand all of those things. The budgeted item to use it for makes sense, but we're gonna go over budget in other areas. So what's that gonna do to the outcome, right? So vehicles are more expensive than what we budgeted for. We're doing the comprehensive plan, which we need to do. To spend that money right now, the other concern is, does it set a precedence where every one of these projects is gonna come for additional funds from the town, right?
And if that were the case, we just say no.
Agreed.
That's easy.
I can throw out one more thing. The RDC will get another $25,000 into their fund next month, once we get the money in from property taxes.
It's twice a year, right?
Twice a year.
Ah, okay, well, that was.
And when does the
something that
TIF run up on the,
For now, let's just count on the $25,000, because I've not seen what else we're getting from the other areas.
got it.
And definitely, the COVID, that would be a big chunk, and they haven't even put a shovel in the ground yet, so.
He just called me, and we'll call him back right after
All
this.
right, let's go. But it'll still be a couple years out
Yep.
before we get any property tax from
Yep.
that.
Yeah, it has to be built and then assessed in a year later. Now that, in its time, when that starts, that's when we can seriously consider putting in sidewalks anywhere that we need them.
Overtime.
Consider, yeah, I don't mean all at once, but the numbers
This
are
council
going.
makes you nervous. We write checks.
Yeah. I'm not trying to spend it before we have it, but those numbers are going to be, the money, if and when the apartments are built, will be higher than the arrangement that was made with the wellness center.
Absolutely, and even from the Taco Bell and the other areas that Tony D's, there'll be some income coming into the TIF, TIF fund as well.
Next year.
So, your budget is set for this calendar year. TIF money, you still gonna get additional money in. That's, obviously not budgeted. So,
Remind me, Yvonne, if we don't spend sidewalk money, we don't lose it, right?
we don't lose it. No. It doesn't, but it can be purposed for the different expenses. I mean, you're not quite halfway into the year yet. You got another 6.5 months of Lord knows what, right?
Well, and knowing or learning that there's $25,000 coming to the RDC soon, to me, that's a whole lot easier to say the RDC, if they value that project, just pay for it. Because the purpose of the RDC is to complement and to provide assets that benefit the community.
Exactly.
And a sidewalk certainly does.
And there's $25,000 on top of the $80,000 in June and in December. So, it's essentially another $50,000 or more this calendar year on top of the 80 that's in the fund.
I don't want to take the wind out of the sails because one of the exciting things is we're finally going to start doing something with that money. So I don't want my comment to be like,
No,
they need
no,
to.
it wasn't perceived that way at all.
'Cause I
But
perceive it.
knowing that there's more, he did, but I did. But there's more coming into the RDC, and I did mention this. There's internal conflict. Do you do absolutely nothing until you can do something huge, or as things come along, you do, and so, you know, there was.
That's why I'm saying I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Because I want us to start doing something there.
And for the record, we did approve to do some landscaping on the sign to the east. We're gonna order new flags for the light poles, and we're gonna wrap some of the electrical boxes to make them less ugly. You know, so there's some things that we already decided tonight to move forward on. I think that the price tag on this particular project compared to the money that is in there was just a little daunting, and a partnership made a project that would be good for the town more, I guess, digestible.
So is the question, we need to make a decision today?
No.
Okay.
No, and
Yeah.
in new business, I just brought
Yeah,
it up
got
for
it.
consideration.
Makes sense.
But learning now what I didn't know then, had I known it then, I would have just quashed that idea and said, let's vote on it right then and there, which is what I anticipate will probably happen on June 5th. So, and we move forward, we put in the sidewalks there, and you can show that, you know, there are improvements being made.
Okay.
So, thank you, Yvonne.
Yes. Good discussion. Thanks, Siobhan, for saving the day. Now, legal updates.
I don't have any updates for you.
I have one question on legal updates. Did Ted's babies come?
They did. His wife delivered last night, twins, Claire and
Wonderful.
Harrison. So
I'm sorry, say it again.
Claire and Harrison are their names.
Claire and Harrison.
So doing well.
Congratulations, Ted.
I'll pass that along to him.
Sleep is overrated.
For him it is right now.
Thank you. Department reports. Jim?
Steve is out with an earache, so got a text from him. One thing, communicating with the council, you know, we've got some projects going on, the wastewater project as a whole, the town center as a whole, the comprehensive plan. So there might be times that I might send out an email to 2 or 1 or whatever. You guys decide how that is. I just want to make sure that I don't get a quorum if, you know, we have meetings and things. So how would you like me to do that going forward? Would somebody want to take the reign on comprehensive, wastewater, town center, just in the meetings? Everybody will be included in the whole overall project, but in the communication parts or meetings. I just don't want to leave anybody out, or do we have to advertise every time we have these meetings? So,
What's your question?
question is, if I have a meeting at the for the wastewater plant, if I invite everybody, I just want to make sure, do we have
If we invite everybody, it has to be public notice and all
public
that.
notice? So it gets complicated. So I would rather do, just, 2 at a time, or, and then rotate that, so everybody's, but in the whole picture, everybody's gonna be informed,
Yeah.
not leaving anybody out, so.
I think it makes sense to have representatives at those meetings
Yeah,
and not have to make a formal post.
yeah.
So would you suggest working with whoever the point of contact is
I could do
to
that.
schedule, send out an email to add a person?
Good.
I think it needs to be consistent.
Yeah.
So
Just so
that-
it's easy. It's also easier if everybody gets on it because everybody's calendars are going to be different. So
Sure.
if we're expecting the same 2 people, and we need to rotate
Yeah.
it, right? Okay.
Very much so. Definitely want to rotate.
Yeah.
But I just.
Well, I'm
didn't-
glad that you said that, because otherwise I was gonna nominate Ryan for everything.
He does know. He knows a guy.
Just because he's not here.
Yeah. Very-
Okay.
So, going forward, Terry, should I just email you and you kind of
Yes.
disperse that? Okay, fair.
Thank you.
And, the only other thing is, well, we did go to an MS4 meeting, and you said the reading was boring, but the meetings were boring. But I tell you, there's a lot of projects out there with MS4, like Georgia. When you get into flooded areas, or, there's some architectural, there's some things that they can do with MS4 that really makes a city nice. When you get into the weeds of it, it's pretty neat stuff. So I'm glad we have Commonwealth here kind of taking the reign for us. We do our best practices, you know, here in town, but we just need the leadership of them to kind of help us keep that program going, because they add layers to it every year. So I think this last week we probably sent out 20 weed letters. We put a nice post, a friendly post out on the Facebook page to kindly keep the yards mowed. We've got a couple of them here. The next step is we're going to average, because they don't open the mail. They just let the cards get returned. So we're going to go ahead and put them in the newspaper. And then we have a little more legal action after the days run out. We'll just start going after them with liens. And tired of being the nice guy, and I don't have a badge, so.
That's what we need to fix.
Yes.
Working on the badge.
Yes.
You may not say what you want, but.
Yeah. So, you know, for the most part, we've got a great town. A lot of people keep, but there are some that just plain refuse to, you know, go along with what our intent is. So we're just gonna have to dig in and go after them. So.
Jim, is there any conversation, any letters that have been sent that you're aware of related to the potential of putting a light at Bittner and 40?
I haven't heard yet. No.
Yeah. 52,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. I knew what you're talking about. Yes.
Thank you.
I haven't heard anything.
Nothing.
No. That's it.
Somebody said somebody was gonna, at one of the coffee chats, somebody brought up that somebody was going to ask to annex property over here off Bittner. Is there progress there?
There is. Yeah, I apologize. I actually picked up the plans yesterday.
Okay.
Haven't opened them yet, but there is about 9 acres over there. Just on, what is it, the east side of Bittner, 400. I think they want to do a 6-lot subdivision. It's just going to broke up into like two drives that kind of break into, you know, the 3 lots on each side. So, yeah, I think I'll set that up with the planning, and we'll go through the annexation and zoning, and because I think zoning's 2.5 through the county, our zoning's R.2. I think the acreage is a little over an acre and a half, I think, per lot. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Price property.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
That it? Bob?
Got nothing new to add tonight, other than get ready, we're ramping up for the golf outing, July 11th. Love
Right.
to see everybody there.
I saw some golf shoes in Yvonne's office, but Jenny politely pointed out that there weren't any in her size.
Twos? I think we've already got 5 teams signed up, and I know we got some donors have already responded, so it's starting off. So the guys just really started posting last week, I believe it was. So
Oh.
pass the word. We're trying to see how many we can get out there.
Well, what is that? What's the team cost?
I think it's $300 for a team, $75 per golfer. I think they're asking for whole donations. Like if you want to be a whole sponsor, it's $100. We've had a few that have come in and already taken that responsibility. I think a few have taken a little more than that, which is wonderful. So the guys are really working hard. Wade and Tyler, and Axe appreciates it. He came in today.
He did come.
He got a chance to visit. Nobody lost fingers.
Yeah. That muzzle.
It's at the links.
Yes, to your links.
And there'll be more information rolling out in the next few days. There'll be a QR code that one can scan, and it takes straight to a credit card payment screen. So the information, most people on your phone might have already got stuff that can be pre-filled, and it's a really easy process to make that donation and let us know in which way you'd like to see that used.
Yvonne's not giving herself credit. That was our biggest problem when we were meeting. The guys were like, how do we get, because we have to either do it with check or cash, and then we got to go through receipts, and Yvonne figured out how to get us to be able to use that, so thank you very much for that.
A really cool credit card company, Merchant Services. I mean, they do a great job for us, and the communication is real easy, and they'll do whatever we ask them to do.
Sweet.
You know, of course it benefits them.
up to you, Yvonne. Anything else?
Yes. I spoke to you today about the CF1 form that you probably have never heard of before. So, Woodland Terrace has an abatement, a tax abatement, for which they have a form that they need to fill out every year. Needs to go in front of council, you got to sign off, hey, yes, they did indeed do what they had promised. And the reason why they received the abatement, and you sign off on it, and it goes to the county assessor, not the assessor, the auditor's office, and they make the determination on how the taxes are applied. I got the CF1 form for this year from them, for tax year 24, payable in 25. But as we've been long awaiting, that that abatement has expired, right? That yes, we're finally
Yes.
going to get the tax money.
Yes.
And so is the fire department,
Yes.
who's over at Woodland Terrace, almost on a daily basis, and really hasn't had a dime paid to them for, from their taxes because of the abatement. Of course, I mean, I understand why abatements are important for my personal business. We've had an abatement in Sherman County at one point, so I get that, but I also see it from this angle, that as the town, that tax money is really important. So they filled out the form thinking that they would get another tax abatement for 24 payable and 25. I called the company that sent it to us. It's a company that is like an incentive management type company. I left a message, I got a phone call back, and the gentleman on the phone was kind of surprised. He's like, well, no, that hasn't expired. I said, yeah, it has. He says, well, you know that, we've not received enough of that abatement. It's only been 3 years, and I had to point out to him that that is not the case. That the abatement started in 2019, and so the 5 years that this abatement was approved for have indeed expired. He's going to do his due diligence because he did not believe that I was correct on that. So I'm not giving you the form to fill it out. I think it's expired. I checked with the county, it's expired.
Yeah.
This is something that Jim and I have talked about for the past 4 years, wondering when we're finally going to get that tax money from that facility. And we should next year be receiving the property taxes. So, so this is kind of, until they figure out that I'm indeed right and they are wrong.
Everybody eventually gets there, Yvonne.
Eventually, hopefully. And if not, they'll have to show me how and why and whatever, and I'll be back with you on that. But for now, that is kind of something kind of odd that's playing.
Well, and I will share with my fellow council members, it did not go unnoticed that 1 year, 3 years ago or so, we got a big check for real estate taxes on Woodland Terrace, and the reason was because they failed to submit the form that they have to submit. So on their side of the scorecard, if they're and I don't know, but if they're thinking, well, we're entitled to 5 years worth of abatement, we only submitted the paperwork for 4, so we should get an extra. That's not the way the abatement was worded. It was a 5-year abatement, and it is a requirement that they have to file the form each year requesting it. They did it for several years, so they knew the process. They missed it. And, I just so that everybody here understands that the fact that they missed claiming it for a year doesn't mean that we need to extend, because the agreement was it's a 5-year abatement.
Starting in 2019,
And ending in 2024.
100% abatement too, correct?
it was 100, then 95, then 90, 90, 90, which is extremely
Yes.
generous in my
Yes.
experience.
Yes. So
So, just if someone were to come in and request and make the argument, we thought we'd get 5 years abatement, we only applied for 4, you know, obviously everybody's entitled to their own opinion. That's not one that I think that we need to extend something because they missed the filing that they were aware to do. And so it doesn't surprise me that now they're outsourcing it, because when they did it in-house, it didn't quite work. But that's not our problem.
And in the process over these years, they've changed hands, ownership-wise. So that may cause some confusion. We'll see. The gentleman seemed kinda, you know, taken back by, you know, the whole conversation. It was interesting. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Next, public comments, 5 minutes on any topic. All right. Council comments. Ryan is absent. Ethan?
I'm going to be doing a council chat. My next one, the first Friday one, would be June 7th, 8 a.m., and I'm going to do it at Dry Bones again, just kind of going back to that location. Would anybody like to join me on that Friday, June 7th at 8 a.m.?
I'll join you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Terry. Other than that, just recognizing and celebrating all the end-of-year activities, specific, you know, school graduation, lots of retirees and teacher recognition, and just celebrating with our school district the exciting things they're closing out in. That's all.
Okay. Chad?
I have nothing at this time.
Bill?
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
Wonderful. I want to thank Ethan for initiating and executing the proclamation to the school board retirees. That went over very well, and they were very appreciative. So just trying to strengthen our relationships and partnerships throughout the town, I think strengthens us as well. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
So moved and seconded. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.